Hey guys, Heidi Foy with Bullfrog Creatives. Whenever I have my phone next to me, it always tells me that I'm live, which is funny because I know at least when that's going on. Hey, this week, I'm super excited about this week. As usual, something always happens. Something this morning, every day, something happens that tells me and reminds me that the rodeo industry and the rodeo world, the rodeo family, really is no 5 degrees of separation. We ran into somebody that my parents grew up with rodeoing when we were at lunch, and it was great. They do real estate in Casper, so of course I was quick to whip out my business card. But it made the 1 hour lunch turn into like 2 hour lunch, which is also great because if any of you guys know my dad, you know that the natural gene of BSing, it runs real strong in this family. So we were able to catch up and pass business cards around. But again, it's just the major connections that we get in the rodeo industry and where else they serve us in our lives is always super impressive to me. So, hey, you guys, stick around. Today, we're going to talk with John Franzen. Also, we're going to try not to tell very many stories about our parents. Maybe we will. So stay tuned. Hey, John. Super excited to have you on. Listen, let me tell you what spurred this. I saw that fabulous interview that you did with the Cowboy Channel. That was
Thanks.
so good. So good. Very well spoken, I will say. And the background and the information that you gave on each of those horses, man, it just speaks volumes, not only to you, but also to y'all's breeding program, which I think I would say new, like the fact that you don't just raise buck and stock, like if it bucks, it's good, but there's actually a very specific breeding program when it comes to making those animals, and they love what they do. So it was so informative for me, for sure.
Yeah, well, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me on, and yeah, that's uh, what I live for. Bucking horses is what we do, and what we've created with the Bucking Horse Breeders Association and our lineages
Mhm.
from all the way back to where it started in Canada, and it started with a draft horse and a thoroughbred, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden that they were really big and strong and athletic, but yet they didn't have any fire to them, and they kind of introduced an Arabian breed to it in there as well. So, but it's really neat to see where it's went.
So let's go back a little bit. You may or may not be familiar with all the crazy things that I do on this platform, but it really started, man, it'll be a year tomorrow when I started with these live videos, but it really started kind of focusing on college rodeo. So let's talk a little bit about kind of your college rodeo career and how you ended up, I guess, back in the family business.
Yeah, high school, college, rodeo. I guess I grew up wanting to be like my dad. He worked every event. He's one of the greatest collegiate athletes still to this day. Still holds the record for the most collegiate all-around titles won in a year. Won the bull riding national championship and the all-around. So when I grew up, all I wanted to do is do
That,
what he did. That's all
yeah.
I've ever heard about was, you should have seen your dad back in the day. So that's what kind of sparked my rodeo career. And then I rodeoed for the last 17 years professionally. But through college, what I was trying to do is get my communications major and have an education and let rodeo pay for that. And I was fortunate to do so through the University of Wyoming. And I got to rodeo with my cousins, and that kind of sparked my professional career as well. I had a really successful rodeo career through high school, college, and into the professional ranks. So I was really fortunate. But I guess what it did for me more than I thought it was doing at the time was I was going to all these rodeos and I was seeing all of their setups, and I was seeing different rodeo announcers and different ways to do rodeos and different ways to produce rodeos. And I didn't realize that I was learning that at the time. Well,
Mhm.
now with all of my rodeo committees, I can give insight to, hey, I seen this work at this particular platform, and I seen this not work, and be able to give insight to how us contestants, when we show up, what it feels like when we get to those rodeos, and just try to make it better for the rodeo committee in general. And
Mhm.
that's kind of luckily enough, my high school rodeo and college rodeo and into the professional ranks has really made it better because I have insight to being on both ends of the arena.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and obviously your dad had that same insight, but I think when you've been removed from that contestant position for a little while, you kind of forget some of those little tweaks that can be made to help make it easier on not only the contestant but even the fans, the announcers, the contract personnel. And so I think you bring something pretty important to the table, especially for those committees, because I mean sometimes they don't have any experience; they just want to see it be successful.
Yeah, and nowadays rodeos change so much.
Mhm.
What we see today on the road and how we enter and how
Oh man,
the money has changed. What I see in rodeo now is a totally different thing than what my father had seen and his peers before him. So it's luckily enough for me, I was able to still be able to rodeo and work in through our company. And now I've stepped back from the bulldogging as much as I used to. I still like to go to my circuit rodeos and go to the rodeos, especially compete at the rodeos that I'm at. And that's really fun for me to be able to run a steer and then
hmm
walk right down the arena and flank my bucking horses. That's the ultimate for me.
yeah,
But I guess what I'm trying to say is what I see on both ends of the arena, and not just necessarily the rough stock side. As a stock contractor, you kind of get tunnel vision and what I need for my bucking horses and what I need to do to impress the rough stock cowboys. But Hank being able to do both events and both ends of the arena, and me as well, we also want to make a great rodeo on the timed event side of it. And I think that's why a lot of contestants enter our rodeos.
yeah, I think you're right. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the history of Powder River Rodeo. I remember, I mean, our families go way back. Our parents knew each other. I think your mom was in my aunt's wedding. Like this is the family, the rodeo family. Um, I remember when I went to college, Joe Glenn was a brand new his first year in Missoula. So this is
Okay.
pre UW. So Joe Glenn's recruitment trip was my recruitment trip when I went to Missoula to the University of Montana, and I met him at the hotel, and he was the nicest guy I'd ever met. And it was then that, like that next year, he started using Powder River Letter Buck, and I'm like, I know where that came from. That's from like you can't be taking that.
Yeah.
And so I remember, and then of course he came to Wyoming and did an amazing job for the University of Wyoming also. And it fit. Like I think UW and the people that go to UW and the people that are from Wyoming, they know where that comes from. And so it really fit our culture. I would love for you to give us just a little bit of history of Powder River Rodeo.
Um, the stars aligned for my folks. It was you know, an opportunity that wasn't really presented to them in a way that they just said, "I want to do a rodeo company." Uh, it's a long story, and one
Yeah.
of these days it would be really cool to tell because it's just all on chance and fate and everything, and and being able to go and try to purchase this rodeo company with nothing. My dad was working at the coal mine, and mom was working insurance, and what they built from absolutely nothing is so impressive. And I got to give everything, all the success that we've ever had for in the last few years to what they started way back when. So, but that being said, that Powder River Rodeo started in 1986, and we had a partner at the time that was in the oil field business, and he ended up going under, and we ended up having the opportunity to purchase it. and at the time probably wasn't next to nothing at this day and age, but at the time for them to purchase rodeo stock, trucks,
Yeah.
everything. Dad had all the knowledge, and they had all the work ethic in the world, but without money, sometimes that's a little tough to do. So, but yeah, they started with a handful of rodeos and brought them into the PRCA the old school way. They didn't buy anybody out, so they had to bring in so many rodeos that had so much money added, and then they were on. Then they could go to the NFR the following year,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, it's a really cool story. How they met with their partner and all of that kind of stuff, but. To say the least, my folks are amazing people. I just what they do, and still to this day, I'm pretty sure my dad's out corrugating a field right now while I'm doing this interview. So they work their butts off, and
He's going to be
it's awesome.
messaging you. You're taking a long lunch, aren't you?
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure.
Well, so I appreciate that. The other thing that I'm super interested in, when did I'm curious. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense now, but when did the stock contractor business turn into a breeding program?
Uh, and that has to go back to my mom. She's really kept a really close eye on every horse that we've ever owned.
Hmm.
We have a spreadsheet, Excel sheet that I can go into right now, and I can tell you the very first horse that they bought way back when, what it was bred to, where it came from, where it ended up going, and that's every horse that we've ever had. So the book work that Lori has put
Yeah.
into it is immaculate, and they started it right off the bat. They got a handful of horses from Harry Vold, and they ended up. Our breeding program really started when we were able to purchase a bunch of mares from Johnny Morris, and Johnny, we got a couple studs from him and
Mhm.
some mares, and to this day, of nearly 450 horses, I would say they all go back to about 10 or 12 head that we originally started with
Wow.
from Johnny Morris. And those particular horses, their bloodlines are so deep in our program that they go back to the Custer and everything that all of everybody's programs are derived from, but they were able to keep those set of mares and not really change anything, and it
Hmm.
worked out really well for them, because a lot of times you get one and then you want to try a different stud and you want to try different mares, and you're always kind of mixing and
I'm
matching.
mixing.
But once they realized what they had, they really stuck to it, and that's what gave us the great foundation that we have to have an actual breeding program and a remuda that we can be proud of. I can breed one stud to 15 or 20 mares, and back in the old school days, you might get 3 or 4 horses out of there.
Right.
And this day and age, we're breeding right at 60 mares, and
Wow.
we're usually right at about 35 colts. And there's about 80 to 90% of those that definitely go on to be in not only our herd, or maybe we'll send them to some amateur contractors
Hmm.
or what have you. But I would say 60% of them go directly back into our professional herd. And we don't have a lot of high school or college rodeos. So, they have to be a 20 pointer or better to stay around here.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that has changed, hasn't it? I mean, I remember y'all being, I mean, we have a picture of Hank Franzen standing on the back of the chute helping Sean, who is my brother,
Yeah.
get on a saddle bronc course. I think his senior year, like, I'm going to be a saddle bronc rider. So, I mean, that's changed, which is, I get it. I totally get why, because you want to, if you're going to make it to the NFR level, you've got to be going to that level of rodeos. So I totally understand that. But one thing for those of you guys that listen, this is me. So when I say this, I'm talking to myself. For those of you guys that aren't real familiar with the rough stock events, I've been around long enough to know that a lot of the bucking horses of the year like the original names, like some of the old school names that you remember came from Powder River Rodeo. So it's really great to, like, I love hearing about your mom. She had to have been ahead of her time, kind of keeping track of stuff like that, because I think for so long, it really seemed like a flip of the coin. Like this one bucked the guy off down the street, so we're going to give him a shot here. And then you add him to your herd, and to know that your mom was keeping track of that stuff, that long ago, that really speaks to kind of the foresight that your parents had when they first established the company.
Yeah, I mean, she and Hank both, they both, they had a vision for what they
Hmm.
wanted. And when they first come out with these registries, they're like, well, this would tell you what your horse is out of and how it goes back. And we're like, we already know that. We do
Yeah.
that all the time. That's what we've done. And that's why our program, I can look back, and when I put $2 Chuck or somebody on a mare, I can see that mare's previous colts all the way back to the first one she had, and then her sister's colts, and that mare's grandmother, and how all of those played out. So I know what works and what doesn't, and they still may not work, but we do have a lot better chance, and we have a better insight of how that all works. And we study it. It's not something that we just, you're exactly right. Back in the day, they had the piss line mares, and they had the mares of the wild horses, and you just go out and gather whatever you could and then buck them. And if they bucked, that was a horse. Yeah, and then we're just going to turn 2 or 3 studs out with 30 mares, and whatever it breeds, fine, and there's cleanup studs, and whatever they're
Hmm.
bred to
Hmm.
is fine. And they, Hank and Lori, from day one, they put a certain stud on a certain mare, and bred them that way. And what a game of chance. Exactly. It's not 100% in any way, shape, or form. And we've been lucky so far, very lucky with our stud choices. And like I said, we're just really fortunate to have what we have now.
So this is going to be a hard question. I mean, it would be for me. What, I guess, well, so I have two questions. I have to remember these questions because I'm getting old, so I forget things. Um, First and foremost, favorite horse, favorite bucking horse that you have ever worked with. Let's keep it clearly in Powder River, but what's your favorite one? Either because of a memory of a childhood, like, okay, two, maybe two. You
Yeah.
gotta have a favorite. Everybody has a favorite kid. Come on.
Two. Yeah.
I'm just
Um,
kidding. You don't have a favorite kid.
Not yet.
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I get this a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna make a belt, and I have these conchos all set out, and I said I'm just gonna put my favorite horses on it. I sat there and looked at it for like 25 minutes, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So obviously, Gaddafi Skull was a horse that put us on the map.
Yeah.
And he was something that, as a kid just growing up, yeah, it's Gaddafi. It isn't no big deal. But now I see what he did for our company, and he's something that brought our company to a different level to where we are today. So
Mhm.
without mentioning him as well, like he's one of the greatest ever. Now my personality or uh, my relationship with Gaddafi was different because I wasn't around him like I am the horses are today. And even Miss Congeniality was our next world's champion, and she
Mhm.
was really cool. But I was in high school. I wasn't doing a
Yeah.
lot of flanking. I didn't know a lot about the breeding program. I was, doing sports. So she's obviously one of the greatest horses we ever raised, but I didn't have that relationship with her as I do the horses we do now. Um, and it might come to a surprise to a lot of people, but one of my very favorite horses is Blackleg, and he's not won a world's title but his success story of being a horse that started out as a bareback, and he was bucking people off, and then he kind of had some scoots at some bigger rodeos where they didn't like him anymore. And
Mhm.
then we hauled him for 2 or 3 years, and nobody would get on him. He'd be turned out every
You
time. But I
turn
just
out.
had this faith in this horse.
Yeah.
And he comes out, and Caleb Bennett decides to trust me, and he's going to take him to the circuit finals. And to take him to the circuit finals was a big deal because I knew somebody would have to get on him. Well, Caleb draws him, and Caleb goes out and he's 89 points. And
Yeah.
the NFR list had already been put out. He said, I promise you next year he'll go. He said that horse deserves it. And he ended up going out, and he had a great year. People started getting on him. And now he's one of the most sought after horses at a rodeo for us. You know, they've won NFR go rounds on him. They just won Red Bluff Roundup on him. And he's got a personality like no other. Like, he stands in the chute completely square, perfect.
Yeah.
Like, pull me, do whatever you want to do. I'm going to have my day, and I can take
Yeah.
that
I'll
horse
give you your
anywhere in the
chance.
country. Yeah. And those type of horses, I really connect with horses on a I guess spiritual level, on the fact that I can feel what they're thinking, and those really great athletes. Two Buck Chuck's one of those horses. Craig at Midnight, obviously one of my very favorite horses. Same deal. He was hurt till he's 5 or 6 years old. I give him time off, and then when we do take him out, the poor horse is so wild, he don't even know what he's doing once he gets in the chute. So we got all these problems, and people are like, oh, we need to outlaw him because he's going to hurt somebody, and this and that. And then, then he goes on to win the world, and now he's one of the best horses we ever owned as well. So to say what horse I absolutely love the most, it's just really hard.
You can't.
I love every horse for a different reason in a lot of different ways. Even the horses that are wild and crazy and don't give you that opportunity to be really close with them, you still have that connection with them because all they want to do is have that free spirit. So that's really, really special to me.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to me and everyone, I suppose, about what is the difference? I mean, how do you know which event to put a horse in? What's the difference, I guess, the primary difference between a good saddle bronc horse and a good bareback horse?
Well, I guess I'll start off with saying that a horse will tell you everything you need to know if you can humble yourself enough to listen to him.
And any horse.
In any horse, any event, anything. One of the worst things I ever don't like to hear was, well, that horse isn't doing this, so I'm just going to try a bigger bit, or I'm going to do this to him to make him work. That's not the way they do things. You got to listen to them, and it's the same difference in the bareback and bronc riding. I'm going to watch him buck. I'm going to watch the way he carries his head. I'm going to watch his front feet and make sure that he's not walking on his front end, or the way he kicks. And those are all things that you learn over time and seeing numerous young colts and watching. And you basically just apply what you've seen from other horses and see if that works with the next horse. But a lot of times it's due to how if they're moving out, if they're taking longer jumps, usually they'll probably want a little bit of saddle bronc. The halter has a lot to do with the way a horse will either set up and buck or want to move out. And if you have one that's really wanting to be up underneath himself, maybe the bareback riding is best, because you don't want them to get so up underneath themselves that they're kind of claustrophobic from it. You want them to move out. And it just, I can't hardly explain it other than just knowing.
Just watching.
It's a lot of experience, and I'll be the first one to say that I don't have it figured out by any means. But with the ability of my dad watching thousands of bucking horses, my mother, listening to them, getting their ideas, applying what I've learned, does give us a little bit better idea.
So the most important question that I will ask today: how do you name your horses?
Ooh, very carefully.
Because it's going to be, it's said at every rodeo now. It's not just number 101 coming in. It's kind of a big deal.
I tell you what, a really, really good name and one spectacular trip at one big rodeo can change that horse's career. It
Yeah.
could even have bad trips after that. But if somebody's seen that horse and it's a
Hmm.
catchy name, it can completely change that horse's career. Two Buck Chuck, Craig at Midnight, Lipstick and Whiskey, Wyoming's Miscongeniality at one time, Gaddafi, all of those great animals. People seen them be great somewhere, and that
And
name
remembered.
sticks in their head to where they can't forget it. Lipstick and Whiskey was a one of my favorite ones. This, Fat Bottom Girl was a good one. She actually didn't have a very good career, and everybody loved her name, so she went everywhere. So it's, but we just listening to songs. We get a lot of driving time in, and to make everything work on our end. We don't have a big business that supplements our rodeo company, so we do a lot of hauling cattle in the fall, and we just kind of do whatever it takes to make it all work. So whenever you hear a good song or something come across the radio that's kind of catchy, then you just kind of
You got to
write
grab
it down. I've got a list that's 1,000
it.
names long that I still haven't used. So we'll kind of run through there. But generally, I like to put something with the stud and the mare
Mhm.
together, and it makes it that much easier to remember its mother,
Lineage.
its father, its breeding, the number. It just kind of, you can ask me any horse on this place, and I can tell you its number and its mother and its father and its grandmother and its grandsire, and that just makes it easier for sure.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so those are all of my important questions. I know one of the things I've been really interested in is when, and you kind of spoke to this, so we may kind of repeat us a little bit, but I have heard and seen of horses going back and forth between the two bucking events.
Yes.
Um, at what point do you know to make that call?
Well, generally, if you're watching closely enough, you'll know that you need to stay a step ahead of them,
Gotcha.
because they're usually one trip away from needing to go to that other event. But if you do it too late, it's kind of almost like that one trip that they had at the rodeo that may or may not had a good out for that cowboy already kind of hurt its
Hmm.
career. And you have to realize
Confidence.
that all of these horses, their career is only as good as the cowboys will let it be. So if it has a bad reputation of doing this or that, and you let that be seen more than about twice, then they're done coming and getting on him. Or that horse just can't go to a certain rodeo or doesn't have the ability to go to the bigger rodeos. So
Hmm.
you always want to stay a step ahead of that. If it's a horse that might stall, you want to make sure that you put it in the bareback ride. And even though it may not need it at that time, that I need to set it up. So say I'm going to set it up at this smaller rodeo, and which will be really good for it and be a really good chance to allow it to be spectacular in the other
In the
event
next one.
at the bigger rodeo down the road. And you just want to always, I kind of put it as a football team, and that's kind of what I feel like I am, is basically a coach of a football team.
Hmm.
We work with them all the time. We want to put them in their positions to be successful. There's some horses that are faster, stronger, and better at certain events than others, same as a position in football. But also, what we want to do is we want to really have their feed program down and make sure that we give them the best opportunity
Opportunity.
to have the ability to, jump high, kick hard, not wash out in the chute, really be calm in the chute. Like, those are little things that we try to do before the rodeo ever starts, and to have that horse in the condition 2 months before rodeo is what makes the ability to do that, because you can't just take the belly off a horse, you know, if he's not in shape beforehand. So it's like a process. I need to get him in this type of shape. That way, right before the rodeo, he's got
We
the
can get him
energy, but
in.
I can
Yeah.
take the belly off him as well. And it's no different than any athlete in any
Huh.
professional sport. And that's one thing that we really key on. And like I said, as far as switching them from event to event, a lot of times it goes back to our breeding, goes back to Lori's paperwork. What did this horse's sister do? What is it? You know, does it do the same? Does it have the same tendencies as its brother? Well, yeah, it does. So at this rodeo, maybe it will be better in this bigger setup with a longer or bigger arena. She'll be fine. But this other arena we're going to is an awful small arena where the buck and shoots are, say, maybe not on the end, that they're on the side. And that'll change its pattern because it has more room to either circle left or right. And that's just all little things that, I think most cowboys think we just throw the horses in the draw and whatever happens, happens. But, it might take me 3-4 days to do
to figure
one
out.
rodeo's job. And once we get the draw, I might look it back over it and say, well, next week it's got to go here, or maybe it's got to go there. So I might change that all around again. So it changes everything. And then say at one rodeo, he gets turned out. That means that he lost that trip at that rodeo. Maybe he needs to go to a different rodeo to be seen and try to keep him going. So there's a lot more to it than most people will realize.
For sure. And I mean, that just brings to mind, like, now I have lots of questions and we're already coming up on 30 minutes. My guess is it's different than when you're riding a saddle horse, because you don't want to mentally break a saddle horse, but there's a different level of confidence that you build in a saddle horse than what you want to build in a bucking horse. Because I don't want my saddle horse to have that much confidence, because then they'll be doing bucking horse stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I clean that up. So I think that's interesting. I'd never really thought about that, like building their confidence. If they have one bad out, I mean, I assume the potential is just as damning for them as it is for the cowboy. Like, they've got to get their confidence back to know that they can buck good and hard in this type of arena. So that's super interesting.
Yeah. It's exactly what you're saying. You don't want to break them, but you want them to always have their confidence in what they're doing. And it's no different than giving a young toddler, if something happens and you don't say no or knock it off right then he doesn't realize that he did something bad. Well, vice versa. The same thing is when that horse has something bad happen to him and he gets away with something, then it's just going to be repetitive. If he blows by you in the alley, now all of a sudden he's not a horse that you can stop in the alley. If he's a horse that stalls, he gets away with it. He's a horse that's going to stall a lot.
Every time. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. So,
giving them enough leeway, but not very much like a toddler. Good comparison. You don't want to crush their spirit either.
Toddler, but my nephew,
I know
that if I let him get away with anything, it's
all over.
Yeah, for sure. So
that's funny.
But, I just horses are all the same. Their minds are all the same. They might be bred to do things differently. Race horses, cutting horses, bucking horses, but their minds all work the same. And you don't break a horse. You learn to teach a horse with you. And that's one thing that we really concentrate as 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds to shoot break them. And that's just, I maul them over. I want them to be friendly. I want them to stand in the chute and not wash out or be worried about what's going to happen. That way, when they go out to buck, all they know to do is to jump and kick and enjoy it, not get barked up and hurt in the chute or anything like that. We really want to encourage that they really like it. And they end up, after a while, just like we said, Blackleg, Craig at Midnight, 2-Buck Chuck, they love their job. When the trailer pulls up and the truck starts, their ears perk up and they're ready at the gate. Like, let's go.
Yeah, my turn.
You have to allow that to become enjoyable for those young horses as well. And that's kind of how we end up getting there.
So time flies when you're having fun. So I have one more question and then I will let you go back to work. I'm interested in your training program. So you said you kind of start the 2- and 3-year-olds. What does that look like between, when they hit the ground and when they buck their first rodeo? That's a lot. What age do they usually buck? And then like what goes into that time frame?
So when they hit the ground, uh, we wean them after about 5 months, and then uh, they'll basically not do absolutely anything but grow up. My mom's got a little piece of land up by Gillette, Wyoming, on my grandparents' place that we summer the colts at.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point, then they go to another pasture the next summer, generally in Montana or right Wyoming, where we've got some grass that's kind of spread out all over. But until they're 3 years old, do anything with them but
Feed
worm
them.
them and feed
Mm-hmm.
them. And all I want them to do is I keep them on Equilix. I think that is probably the best product there is going down the road. I've got 450 head of horses, and they all look exactly the same. And no matter if they're a slow eater or a hard doer or one that's really easy keeper. So that's really been essential to our program. Um, after they become 3, we will take them and we'll shoot break them. And Craig and I and Dad, basically, we'll get the boom box out, might maybe get us a 6-pack of beer and just treat them like they're at a rodeo. They
Mm-hmm.
might sit in the chute for 15 minutes. They might sit in the chute for a half hour until they allow us to sit on their backs and pet them and take all the knots out of their manes and
Mm-hmm.
get them to where if I just stand here, everything's great. And we do that for a couple weeks. And after that, then we'll generally put one dummy trip on them, and we'll take the, automatic dummy and put that on them and let them. And we don't give them a
Throw it
lot of
around.
flank. All we want them to do is kind of move out, catch their
Mm-hmm.
feet, make sure that they understand that when I'm kicking and bucking, I've got to keep my feet underneath them. And we want to do that at a young age because they don't usually want to hurt themselves. If they fall down or something, it's kind of like a young kid. His bones are a little more pliable and
Mm-hmm.
they don't have so much power or weight on them. And then as a 4-year-old, we'll bring them back and put one more dummy trip on them before our school. And our school is in Miles City, Montana, generally. And we call it the Battle of the Scholars. And basically all the kids come for free. And we buck the horses out for their first time.
That
One
scares
kicker.
me.
But it is a lot better than it used to be. Most of the time you just took them to a high school rodeo and they'd never been
Yes,
bucked. And
exactly.
now they have 2 dummy trips under them and cross my fingers and knock on wood. We haven't hurt any animals. We haven't hurt any kids, but they stand good in the chute.
Right.
They're not wild and crazy. They understand fences. They're not falling down or anything like that. So we've got along really well with the way our programs work so far, and it's safe for the kids, and as a 4-year-old, then they'll kind of hang out, not go anywhere till Belle Fourche. We'll usually buck them in the ranch rodeo there at Belle Fourche, and then they go and hang out in South Dakota for another summer. And then at that time, they've got 2 or 3 trips on them,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll bring them back as 5-year-olds. And then at that time, I kind of know what horses need to go where and have an idea where they need to go. And then we'll start putting them in the bigger rodeos and start stashing them every here and there. But it's not really till about 6 or 7 till I'll trust an animal to go to a big rodeo. And that's just something that we do to take care of our rodeo committees. We want cowboys to come to our rodeos and understand that they have a chance when they get there. And when we do all these dummy bucking and all of their trips at these ranch rodeos and other rodeos, as colts, we video every single animal. Each animal has an album on my phone. If somebody calls me and says, "Well, I got this horse at Heber City, Utah, and I've never seen him go, and he doesn't have any stock stats," I'll send him 6, 8 videos right then, and he'll be like, "Oh, well, that's a good horse. Why hasn't he been anywhere?" Well,
He's
I'm
only 5.
I'm
Yeah, he's
yeah,
only
I'm
6.
grooming these horses to be solid for you. So when you get to this rodeo, he's going to have a good day, and you got a chance to win. And that's been really a huge part of our program the last probably 5 or 6 years. Is we've been able to take younger horses
Mm-hmm.
that generally aren't proven that are kind of proven already. And
Right.
cowboys know that they can call me personally and I can tell them, this horse is this way or that way, or if you're a chance here or not a chance. And but essentially what we're trying to do is get cowboys to trust us to bring good horses to the rodeos, which allows the rodeo committees to understand if they hire powder rodeo, it might cost a little more, but it also is more of a proven deal.
Right, right, for sure. So did you just spill all the trade secrets? Or is
Absolutely
this, I was going to say, or is this is this common? Are other stock contractors doing similar
yeah.
programs or?
Yeah, they are. Everybody has their different ideas of what
Yeah,
works and what doesn't work. But generally, most everybody's starting to do a little more of the dummy bucking, just because there isn't a lot of cowboys out there. There's like our high school rodeo in here in Riverton, they actually hire the dude ranch to put on their bucking horses. So it's a different day and
it's
age of
different.
the first time Miss Congeniality was out. Uh, she was out in, I think it would have been May. She went to Thermopolis High School Rodeo for her first trip. In that December, she went on to be the third ranked saddle bronc horse at the National Finals Rodeo.
Well, that
So,
makes a high school kid feel real good.
but I tell you what, the kid that got on him, got on her, excuse me, she actually ended up jumping out of the arena, that particular. But he went on to be a national high school champion saddle bronc rider as well. And those kids were challenged different back in the day. They really
Yeah.
were. Seth Glaus, I used to watch him get thrown off every single animal for a couple years, and he goes on to be, win the average at the national finals in the bull ride. And so it does test those kids, but I think it would be good to have a little bit more of that than we do now, just because it's hard for them to make the transition from a dude horse to a bucking
A bucking
horse
horse.
when we get to a collegiate level.
Yeah, for sure. Man, I've learned so much. I mean, I can tell the difference between the bucking styles a little bit, but I've always wondered kind of how y'all make that choice. I really, really appreciate your time and your knowledge. I know that Hank's probably standing back there tapping his toe, telling everybody to wrap it up, but I think he knows both of us well enough to know that we won't listen.
Oh yeah, for
We
sure.
never
No,
have. Why would we start now?
yeah, I don't know why we'd start now, but we just really appreciate you guys having us on and giving
Oh
us a
yeah.
platform. I think rodeo has come a long ways in the last year or so, because uh, we've had this cowboy channel and we've had more of this go on. Most people don't understand that there's anything to the rough stock side of it, or
Mhm.
even the production side of a stock contractor's rodeo. So thank you guys for having us on.
Oh yeah, no problem. I definitely appreciate your time. I think that was one of the questions I'll ask. So maybe you can comment or something. But last year was tough. I mean, y'all didn't have near the amount of rodeos that you normally have that you can normally count on. So I'll be interested to see. I'm so excited to have kind of rodeo back. I know we're going to have the college finals here in Casper again. Rodeos have been going on. I know there's some bigger ones that did not choose to carry on this year, but I think they'll be back next year. So super excited to have some sense of normalcy. I think we're super lucky in the state of Wyoming. South Dakota is also real lucky that things are kind of opened up. I would say that's the blessing of living in a less populated state for sure. That we don't have to, I mean, we already social distance, so there wasn't really a big change there. We won't get too far into politics because that is a real hard bus to turn around once you get going. But I most certainly appreciate your time and definitely respect what you guys have done. It's been super, super cool to watch. I mean, growing up, watching the change from in high school and college and watching and being able to see, I know those guys, like I rodeoed with those guys, my parents rodeoed with those guys. But then also to watch your success at the national level and just to kind of have those connections. I can tell you, Wyoming is proud, and I will speak for Wyoming on this one. Like it's an honor to have you guys represent us at the NFR, and y'all have made us real proud, and you've got the entire state behind you.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate it. That means a lot to us, and we're Wyoming proud as well. As far as last year in the rodeo industry, it did take a really, really tough year. but like Dad said, we're survivors. It doesn't matter what it throws at us. We'll make it through, and we're just happy that our rodeo committees are all on go this year, and really appreciate our sponsors, Logan Coach Trailers, American Hat, Cinch Jeans, man. Just the support that people are giving us, and like you said, the rodeo's coming back this year. It takes an army, you know what I mean? It's Craig Rowe, my family. We just we're a small group, but we're all on the same page to make this as great as it can be. We're for the collective goal, and we just really appreciate you guys recognizing that.
Well, we appreciate you, man. I'm going to take you off the screen and do a little checkout, but don't hang up on me just yet. All right.
All right. Thanks.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us. Heidi Foy with Bullfrog Creatives. I would like to second some of the things that John just said. We have been, I say we, but it's just me here. So Bullfrog Creatives has been doing these live videos 1 year tomorrow. And it's definitely opened some doors for me personally that I never imagined would be opened. I've always had a passion for rodeo. And for those of you guys that know me outside of this, I can talk a lot. So the two of them mesh very well together, I think. A special shout out to Cinch Jeans. I reached out to them probably about June of last year because I knew the group of people that they were going to be missing out on that year were watching what I was doing. And so they were graciously, they opened the door to have a partnership with Bullfrog Creatives and my family and I to partner with them. I am fully decked out in Cinch Jeans clothing today, which I'm very proud of. And we certainly appreciate their partnership. So for those of you guys that do not know, I will be coming to you live during the College National Finals Rodeo, courtesy of the NIRA and Cinch Jeans. So look forward to that. I'm super excited to have some production partners from our community, Wild Brunch Productions, and a good friend of mine that does a lot with theater and Stage 3 productions, Don Anderson, is going to help out. So we've got some Road to the CNFR stuff coming up in the next few weeks because, y'all, it's close. It's not. Really, there's just a handful of rodeos left in each region, but it's coming up fast. Tickets are on sale. So if you guys need to get your tickets, go for the season tickets because you're not going to want to miss one night of action. I feel I'm real passionate about college rodeo for several reasons, but one of them is it's in my hometown. Don't tell me there's nothing to do here because there is. And also what college rodeo has provided to me, I will never be able to repay back. And so this is just the way that I can do that in one form or another. So get your tickets. They are on sale. If I was any kind of marketing person, I would have had that website and posted it in the links, but I have not got that handy. So I will do it after we go live here, after we finish. Thank you guys so much. And I think that's it, man. We got a couple more coaches, hopefully to round up, maybe some alumni. And then the week before the finals, we're going to meet up with the arena director, Jim Dewey Brown, and kind of talk about what it looks like, a little pregame stuff. We'll show you what the event center looks like before the arena goes in. You will, if you've not seen it, you are going to be very, very impressed about the transition. So yeah, just keep tuning in and we will see you next week.